Sonic the Hedgehog was one of the biggest games that Sega had ever released at the time, selling far more than they expected. Sega finally had a competitor to Mario, and almost a one-up to Nintendo. Sonic the Hedgehog released on the 16-bit console, the Sega Genesis, otherwise known as the Sega Mega Drive outside of America, but it actually had another release. Another release that's almost a completely different game to the one that you've most likely played. So hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and let's cover the other version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Make sure to subscribe. Sonic the Hedgehog actually came out on 8-bit consoles, but it's kinda just a completely different game. Basically, back when they were working on the main game for the Sega Mega Drive, Sega wanted a comparable version of the game for their portable console, the Game Gear. Sega wanted the Game Gear to be comparable to the Nintendo Game Boy, so Sega went to a side developer to make this version of Sonic, and at one point also decided to port this game to the Sega Master System, which is a much better way to play this game. For some reason, Sega keeps re-releasing the Game Gear version though, instead of the Master System version. The Master System version is actually the version of the game that I first played, and I got it on the Wii Virtual Console. I only got it though because I think I was supposed to get the main version of the game. Oh well. The first stage of this game is actually also Green Hill Zone, one of the original levels that actually made it over to this version of the game. Act 2 of Green Hill is also very different to the more well-known version of the stage, with this version being a very confusing puzzle. There's a section where you get trapped in this underground labyrinth, with this taking me multiple attempts to figure out how to get past it, but once you figure out the puzzle, the rest of the stage is a breeze. That's the thing that repeats throughout this game. Each stage has one gimmick, and then you finish the stage, which is fine, it just makes this game a lot easier than the main game. Eventually we make it to Act 3 where we meet the game's boss, and just like the first game, the boss is Robotnik. The boss fight in Act 3 is actually a bit different to the original version. Of course, this boss fight is incredibly easy. I'd even say it's easier than the original, with you eventually moving on to the first original stage in this version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Bridge Zone follows one simple gimmick throughout all of its levels, with areas to run followed by a large gap in the ground for you to fall down, with the occasional bridge. Otherwise, the level looks and plays pretty much identical to Green Hill Zone, just a lot more bare. However, this act is meant to be seen more as a transition between Green Hill Zone and what's coming next, with this whole game having a world map. This game follows a similar approach to Super Mario World in having a world map that connects each stage together as if it's all meant to be a part of this one big world, which other 2D platformers at the time didn't really show. If you look at Super Mario Bros. 3, another game that has a world map, it shows each stage on each world, but each world is seemingly its own thing that takes place in completely different parts of the world, whereas this game shows the connection between Green Hill Zone and Bridge Zone. However, unlike Super Mario World, you can't actually interact with the world map, which is a bummer, but who cares? This is still a pretty impressive feature that didn't even make its way to the 16-bit counterpart of this game, which is pretty impressive if I do say so myself, but Bridge Zone Act 2 is an auto-scroller. Why is there an auto-scroller in a Sonic game? I have no idea. However, with this game being the very first Sonic game, a lot of these rules put into place for the Sonic franchise weren't really there yet, but besides from that, this level uses the same gimmicks from Act 1. Bridge Zone actually broke me when I was younger. See, I had this game on the Wii Virtual Console, which I can only assume I accidentally got when I actually wanted the normal version of the game. I played this game quite a bit, but I couldn't figure out how to get past Bridge Zone, and I'm pretty sure it was this level too, Act 2. The auto-scroller somehow just confused me to no end, and I couldn't work it out. Obviously, now I can do it like it's the easiest thing in the universe, but I think this level just confused people. Then we get to Act 3, the second boss. This one is a bit more complicated, with you having to jump on Robotnik in the middle, but it's still a breeze, and you can very easily complete it, but you must remember how this boss fight works, because it'll be back. Just you wait. Next would have been Marble Zone, which was actually planned to be in this version of the game and is playable in the fan-made Sonic Master System remake that I've played over on the His Mario Gold channel. This remake is actually the best way of playing the game, and they actually made a remake of the second game too, but we're playing the original version right now. Anyway, instead of Marble Zone, you get Jungle Zone. This zone seems pretty easy, but you'll slowly begin to realize that this level is just terrible. Act 1 is full of small platforms platforms to jump on, random blocks falling, and lots of holes to fall down. Jungle Zone is the death of me, and we're only just beginning. Act 1 is one of those levels that you have to master, as the first time you go through it, you will just have a lot of jumps of faith, and I can imagine the Game Gear version would have made this level even harder. Act 2 is when this game goes from bad to worse. Act 2 is a vertical level that punishes you all the time. See, this level has you jump from small platform to other small platform trying to avoid falling down. Now, logically, if you were to fall down, you would think that the camera would follow you, right? Right? Wrong. This game does not have the camera come down with you. It instead makes the bottom of the screen a death trap, making some parts of this level completely impossible to get to. For example, near the beginning there's a set of rings. You can't get them, as when you go high enough to get them, the screen comes just a bit too high and kills you the second you try. Act 3 is a pretty easy fight, just hitting Robotnik and avoiding his big black balls. Not that hard. You of course need to think of the timing, but once you got that down, it's not that hard to work out. The next stage is everyone's favourite level, Labyrinth Zone. However, if we ignore everything about the level itself, there's something I found that's pretty interesting about the music of this level. And if you want to hear all the interesting stuff I have to say about the music of Labyrinth Zone, become a member today. That's right. I can tell you all about Labyrinth Zone in the Master System version, or I could tell you to become a member right now, and then you can listen to an intensely interesting discussion about the music of Labyrinth Zone, some stuff about Bridge Zone. It's a very interesting discussion that I actually wrote like 2 years ago, and I could have gone further into it, but I decided not to. So if you become a member today, you can watch that discussion right now. But if you really want to know what my opinion on Labyrinth Zone is, it's basically just the same as the normal version, but the music sounds different. Everything else? I mean, the level design's different, but it's not got anything that the Mega Drive / Genesis version doesn't have. It's the same thing, inherently. So, let's just talk about Scrap Brain Zone. Scrap Brain Zone is the final stage taken from the original Genesis version of the game, and this one is pretty terrible. This level can easily softlock you on several occasions. The music is also very different, but hey, so is Labyrinth Zone. This stage actually reminds me a lot of Chemical Plant Zone from the Genesis version of Sonic 2, where you basically have to solve a lot of puzzles to figure out what to do. It can get very confusing. Each little room makes you try and figure out where to go. You'll be running back and forth trying to figure out which way was the right direction and which way was the wrong direction. It's an endless maze of trying to figure out where to go. However, Act 1 and 2 are reasonable. Act 3 is where you get soft-locked. Well, in the PC remake anyway. It didn't really happen to me in the original version, but whatever. So there's a counter to get to Robotnik, which would be fine. However, if you look at the doors, there's a little graphic on each door to tell you which way you can go through the door. However, sometimes you can't get back into the main area, keeping you trapped in a small room. This doesn't just happen once. It happens on multiple occasions throughout this level. I got softlocked 3 times on my playthrough. You just have to wait for the counter to go back down. I don't know what happened here, but it just doesn't work. There's not even a boss fight at the end. The whole level is just getting trapped in a room waiting for a timer to go down. Scrap Brain Zone was never that good to begin with, but this version of it is just significantly worse than ever before. Well, wouldn't you know it, we're nearing the end of the game. Next we have Skybase Zone, which is some of the coolest things in the entire game, but also some of the worst things in the entire game. It really depends on the level. Act 1 is pretty dramatic. You start in an all-blue area with everything being just this dramatic, awesome feeling, building up to the end of the game. The rings are blue, the clouds are blue, everything is blue, and the aesthetic that the game has in this level is honestly just beautiful. Everything works insanely well. However, the gimmick of these 2 levels is lightning. Lightning kills you instantly, and sometimes it's almost impossible to dodge it. This makes this level really difficult to go through. Luckily, there are enough rings to be able to make it through without dying, but at one point you need to stand on a moving platform and avoid the timed lightning. But the platform moves so slowly that it's almost impossible to do so. Act 1 ends with you landing on a giant ship, with Act 2 being completely different and pretty cool looking. Act 2 has you explore this ship, with things everywhere trying to kill you. It builds up to how dramatic it is. It reminds me a lot of an airship level from Super Mario Bros. 3, or even Flying Battery Zone from Sonic 3. But the airship levels I think is where it truly takes its inspiration from, because there's literally rip-offs of bullet bills here. But once you think you're just getting started and you're into the level, it ends. The sign is right there. There's only 2 acts, and then you're on the final level. Before we get into the final boss fight, let's talk about the special stages. The special stages in this game are so much fun. They're different from the special stages in Sonic 1. These ones are all about bouncing around and trying to find the Chaos Emerald. There are 6 to collect, just like in good old Sonic 1, and they're probably the best part of this game, and it works the same way. You need 50 rings to enter, which is a lot of fun. But let's just get to the final boss. The final boss is extremely easy. I'd even say it's probably the easiest boss fight in this entire game, and you just have to hit him at the correct times in the correct pattern. It's not that hard. Once you work out the pattern, you're golden. It makes the ending of this game pretty underwhelming, but it's an alright final boss, especially for the first Sonic game ever. And then that's it! You roll the credits with Sonic singing into a microphone for some reason. That's all the game has to offer. Of course, it's better if you collect all the Chaos Emeralds, but there's nothing else to add. This game is not a great Sonic game. Let me make that clear. But for the very first Sonic game, I'd say this one is pretty good. And it actually excels in ways that the original version of the game didn't. Where Sonic on the Genesis played it very safe, this version had a bit more uniqueness compared to that version, if you know what I mean. But of course, the best way to play this is the PC port version. That is a brilliant way to play Sonic Master System, and it adds in the original levels from the Genesis version. Even this section in Starlight Zone where you ride on a motorbike, it's like really cool. However, there are the other Master System and Game Gear games, and it's only a matter of time before I subject myself to play them. I'm coming for you, Sonic!